improvement, like all this kind of stuff, but you want to help someone else get there. The one thing is, again, number one, are they actually ready for it and they're actually, willing to put in the work? And then two is just make sure that you're not adversarial or accusative or whatever, which is, hey, I saw something I think might, benefit us, or how about, we look at this together or something, as opposed to like, you really need to, the finger wagging type thing that will elicit people to get defensive and try to be like, oh, they're actually either attacking me or criticizing me or whatever.
Right.
Make it so that it's not adversarial and it's not, comes across as you're criticizing them or something like that.
Okay. But before we go into our next question, I also wanted to just put in there that we're having a little bit of issues with this live. I had a feeling we would, because the internet's been really bad. Now that everyone's at home streaming and all this stuff, the internet's just been really bad. So in the event that we have issues where you're not able to see the first part of the video, or there's a lot of buffering or something like that, this will not be the last time we talk about this. And like Herman mentioned in the beginning of the video, we've got a ton of resources. So I am continuing to check in between questions to make sure that this is working. But if something goes wrong, don't panic. I will make sure that you get a recording of every single thing that we did today, and I'll make sure it's posted on our channel.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
I just wanted to put that out there because I'm monitoring a little bit. So if you see me looking over, it's just because I'm trying to make sure everything's working well while Herman is answering your guys' questions.
So basically, to answer Grace's question, it is a good question. We are going to provide some resources for you and anybody else that you want to introduce to these topics. You can't get them there. People actually have to do the work themselves.
Yep.
So obviously there's someone that you care about, that you've recognized from what you've been hearing from us, that you recognize is stuck in that fear loop and is keeping them from progressing from something, whatever it is. Again, this cuts through every aspect of our lives. It doesn't matter if it's our personal relationships or businesses, whatever it is. That's why I consider this the most important topic. And that's
also why we thought it was appropriate to put it on our channel, because this is something that goes well beyond just tactical stuff. This is something that's important for every type of person on the planet. And that's why I thought, hey, let's take a little bit of a side road during this pandemic with the Nail Hub and give people some valuable information that they can use. So, if you're wondering why we're doing this, it's because we really believe that this is applicable to anybody, including nail lovers, and we wanted to make sure that we were providing value during this time.
Cool.
Okay, so
it
what's
looks like we are getting some people jumping on, and
good.
Like,
yeah, we've got some on there.
Keep an eye on those and just see. So this gets us to the next. It's almost a question and a comment. So
we might need to make this a teeny bit. We might need to, if we're going to answer other people's questions. So we might need to just
as more people start
cool.
coming in and all this stuff. So very great. It was actually an answer to one of my questions. So some of you might have stumbled upon this Safe Tech whole thing strictly through YouTube. But to the people in our newsletter, I actually introduced the subject. And after the first email, I actually posed a question to them. And I asked them, I said, until we start providing you more information, in the meantime, just think about this question and tell me what it means to you. And I said, what would you do if you didn't fear fear? Okay. And I had some interesting answers there. And I just wanted to highlight one from Carrie, who said, I'd step out more in my business life, really put myself out there to learn and to teach. Right?
That's wow.
So it's a perfect example of what we were just discussing, right? Which is, this stuff doesn't have to be only related to safety, personal defense, like tactical stuff.
Right.
It basically cuts through everything that we do in life. And like I've mentioned before, the creator of this entire system of no fear, KNOW fear, not NO fear, no fear, says fear throttles everything.
Absolutely.
Right? So whether you do something the way that you do it, how you do it, how deep into it you go, or you don't do it, all of it is based on how much fear or lack of fear you have into that thing.
Absolutely.
Right? So something that maybe a lot of you would be on the same boat as Carrie here, which is, how many more things would you do for your business, let's say, right, that you don't already do simply because you're afraid.
Right.
Right. And so it could be, I'm afraid that I'm going to fail, so it's not even worth my while. I might come across as being silly or stupid, or that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I fear ridicule. I feel, that I would, if something goes wrong, that I would self-sabotage, and I would be so, critical of myself.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that we all have is fear of failure.
Right.
Right.
So all of these things, all of it is part of that fear loop. It's all part of the same thing. And like I mentioned that initial episode, all of the same dynamics are involved in a situation where you turn around, you have someone with a knife, someone's about to mug you, right?
Yep.
And everything that you have to go through in your mind is all the same thing as to remember when you had to get up in front of the classroom and give a speech in 2 months.
Yeah. Or I gave you the example the other day about e-filing for the first time on a paying client.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like one of those things like people
Well, but I'm just talking about something in the future. So you're already, one is, boom, I have to go through all of that fear cycle, fear loop, get out of it, plan, act, all of that is all in the split second. Mm-hmm. And the other is, oh my gosh, I have to give this book report next month. And I'm freaking out about it already because I hate speaking in public, and whatever the case might be. All of those things that need to happen in order for you to get out of it are present. The only thing that changes is the time compression. One, everything that you need to do to get out of it has to be done in less than a second, and the other one's going to take you a month, right? So all of these things are interrelated. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. And so when you start thinking about what are the things that I would actually do if I didn't fear fear. Now that's almost, it's a trick though, because there's no such thing as not feeling fear. Okay.
Yeah.
So in order for someone to not actually feel fear, they'd have to be a robot, a psychopath, or dead.
But
right?
you can get more comfortable with that sensation.
Yeah, it's how you manage it.
And it's how you manage it.
Yes.
Just like any of your emotions, you can get more comfortable with anything that you're feeling and be self-aware about them, right?
Right.
And that's part of the mindset thing that we were talking about in our first video is once you really start to acknowledge these things, you start working on your self-awareness, you start really getting comfortable with that type of situation within yourself, and you start really thinking through it.
Right.
And you start rationalizing it rather than just going, oh my, I'm so overwhelmed right now, I can't think clearly.
Well, now
you kind of start rationalizing it.
Well, because you have a toolbox now.
Absolutely.
Right? So now I know how to deal with this, right?
Yeah, like when that feeling comes up, and it's no different than your example of what you were just talking about, like public speaking, for example. The first time you do it, just like our fear conversation, the first time you do it, you're going to be completely freaked out. But people who publicly speak on a regular basis still feel fear most people will tell you, I still get butterflies every time I go on stage to do some public speaking event. But they've gotten used to that, and they also have their own mental toolbox that they go through to talk themselves off the ledge, to rationalize what's going on, to get them back on track. And that's exactly the same type of stuff we're talking about with this, which is it just happens to be more about security and preparedness and all of that. But it's the exact same thing. It's just getting comfortable and more knowledgeable about those sensations and those feelings so that you can really conquer that and use those tools that you've learned, we've gone through several of them in this series so that you can actually be empowered to control that a little bit more rather than being controlled by it.
Correct. And that's actually a great point. Just notice how much anxiety and fear, uncertainty builds as opposed to certainty. And even if the certain thing is a bad thing, right? Because if they said, well, there's a 50-50 chance that, X bad thing is going to happen to you, you'd be way more anxious than if they said, no, this bad thing is going to happen to you.
Yeah, and you prepare.
Well, either you're going to prepare or you're going to make peace with it, right? So one of the two. But uncertainty is what keeps that negative movie in your mind rolling. That reel is still going. Oh, well, it could be this bad or that bad or maybe this, and then we get stuck there. That's part of that fear loop, right? We start imagining and visualizing the worst possible scenario.
Yeah. So
we're thinking of something in the future that hasn't even happened, and it's affecting how we feel in the present.
Yeah.
That's fear.
Well, and I think this is a really cool thing to think about. Like, what would you do if I didn't fear fear? That's actually a really cool exercise for you guys to be doing during this time frame, because we do have more time at home, and I know some of you have your kids at home and stuff like that. So yeah, you may not have as much quiet time to yourself in this time, but this is also a really cool conversation to even have as a family. I mean, if you guys are all home together, or you're with your significant other, or even if you're by yourself, or you're with family members, or you're doing house party or FaceTimes or whatever, these are really cool conversations to have, and see if you go around the table and ask, the people that are close to you, what would you do if you didn't fear fear? This is one of those times where you can take advantage of this downtime and start to think about those things.
Yeah.
I mean, what better time to go through this than when you have this extra time? You're not distracted by your regular day-to-day. And yes, it's not necessarily the funnest thing to go through, but I also like turning it around and going, how can I use this time to my advantage?
Yeah.
I know that I'm in this. I know that I'm stuck in this. So what could I do to make this productive, to make this positive? So that's actually a really cool exercise for all of you to do. Just like, we got the response to that question. It was on our email series, so some of you may not have seen it. And I did put links to our email series down below this video if you do want to subscribe, because we do send out a lot of cool stuff there. But like I said, just journaling or discussing with your loved ones about what you or they would do if they didn't fear fear, I think is a really cool thing to do.
And actually, that's a great point. And I'll give you guys a quick example of how we're putting this in action. So obviously, given the fact that, there's the lockdown or whatever, myself as well as all of my peers across the world, because we're actually all of the people that are part of this system, we're everywhere, all over the world. And so all of us have essentially had to close down our businesses. So we canceled all of our classes for March, now April. And so we're hoping that we start getting back into it in May. So we actually get together every week on a Zoom call, and we talk about this stuff. And we say, hey, we do check-ins,
cool.
Sometimes more than a week. And so people from all over the world, we get in there and we start talking about this stuff. And we say, hey, man, I'm finding myself in the fear loop about this. Like, what are you guys doing to go? So
that's cool.
Here's a few cool things that we're doing. So ultimately, everything's about energy, right? So if I have this anxiety, this kind of low-level, constant anxiety about what's going to happen with my business, how am I going to get through this, everything that everybody watching this is experiencing right now. Something that we've done is, action, right? So going from powerlessness to empowerment is key here. So if I feel like I'm powerless to affect change or to improve my situation, I'm going to get stuck in that fear loop, right? I'm going to keep going around and around, watching that film, showing me that my business is never going to recover from this, that this is something that I can't emotionally, stand, or that this is going to have a very negative impact on my family. I could go down that rabbit hole forever.
I think we all could.
And so we can go from that powerlessness to now empowerment. So what have we been doing? For instance, when we get together and we talk about these things, almost everyone on the call has been saying, what would you do if you had the time? Well, now we have it.
Right.
Now, it wasn't our choice to stop teaching and to close down our businesses, but now all of the things that we always had the excuse of, well, if I had the time, I'd do X. And so, for instance, right now, a lot of us are saying, well, I've always wanted to have a nicer, website, let's say.
Okay.
Well, work on your website.
Yeah.
Stay powerful, right? Stay empowered. Work on that on your website. You have 2 more weeks until you they lift the lockdowns and you go back to work. You have 2 more weeks to get the perfect website that you always wanted. Some of them were like, hey, I've always been scared of being in social media because, you have people that are older that this stuff they're not as comfortable with tech and that kind of stuff. They're diving right in and they're becoming pros at it right now.
Like your mom. Your mom's doing that. She learned how to use Zoom, which is
and all
really
that kind
cool.
of stuff.
Yeah.
So if we're goal oriented and action oriented, that makes us powerful. That makes us empowered. And so if we stay away from that powerlessness, then we also take away the uncertainty, because now we're in control.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I would insert that when I feel overwhelmed, because when you think about this kind of in just like a big old cloud above your head and you have all these thoughts going on about, what would you do if you didn't fear fear? What do you want to accomplish during this time frame? You guys are all taking a first step with this, because you guys have been watching. You're joining us today. You've been watching our Safe Tech series, so you're already being productive by realizing that, hey, I want to learn more about why I feel the way I feel during this time frame and what I can do going forward to get more comfortable with these concepts and learn more about this. But the thing that really helps me to almost break it down so it's digestible for me and I don't get overwhelmed emotionally is I like to write things down. I like to do, if I have a lot of chores to do, I'll make a to-do list and I'll scratch them off as I go, as if I were in school. And it really helps you because you're able to look at it as one thing at a time rather than your head just spinning out of control going, where do I even start with this, right? So even for these goals, like if you want to go through this exercise of thinking about what would I do if I didn't fear, what do I want to achieve during this time frame? Now I have all this time. What are all the things that I've been wanting to do when I have more time on my hands? I would recommend sit down, give yourself at least 15 minutes to sit down. And again, you can do this with your whole entire family if you want to, but sit down and really write that through, because I've been doing that. I actually came up with like a list of 5 things that I want to accomplish that I haven't been able to. And it can be as simple as reading a book because you've never had time to do it, or it could be learning how to do something completely new. But I really think that this is, if you change that mindset, which we've been talking about this entire time, if you really put on that productive, rational mindset that we spoke about in our first video, you can really turn something into a scary uncertainty into a productive certainty, right? And yes, we all know we're stuck at home. Some places are starting to go back to normal, but I say use this as a learning opportunity to go, hey, now I know what this feels like to have things out of control and to go through something like a global pandemic and be quarantined and self-isolation and social distancing. Use this as an opportunity to take that, put it in your toolbox, and now we can move forward with even more empowerment. I think that's so cool.
And I'll share a personal, and for those of you that might still have a little bit of not be clear about what we're talking about, getting out of the fear loop and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to walk you through a personal experience of mine about how I kind of got out of that fear loop in a certain case. Actually, it has to do with what we're doing. Because it actually will help people kind of get a clear idea as to what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then and actually been seeing a lot of really
good
we
have really good questions
so
coming
we'll get to those.
So
but
we'll get to those. Absolutely.
So just real quick, just so you understand. So I've just this year, just recently started doing my own content, my own video content, right? So even though I've been instructing now even though I've been, into all of this since I was 16, 17 when I started in martial arts and all this kind of stuff. As an instructor, I started about 10 years ago. And for the longest time, even though as successful as we've been with the Nail Hub and your videos and everything that I've been behind the scenes, somehow I was always in the fear loop when it came to me being in front of the camera and providing, public content for my stuff, right? So I said, it doesn't matter as long as people show up. I've never had any fear of public speaking. I've given presentations to hundreds of people in the corporate world. I've taught several things, blah, blah. But when it came to actually just putting myself out there in terms of videos like what you do.
Yeah, and social media, and so I think you were a little bit hesitant about
more
being more public.
I found myself in the fear loop.
Yeah.
The bottom line is I found myself in the fear loop, right? And so it wasn't until I came to terms with the fact that, to me, I rationalized as that I don't need it, right? People they spread the word. I get people coming into my classes, whatever. It's fine, right? And so, but it wasn't until my mentor actually, basically, Tony Blauer, the creator of the system that we teach, I'm doing a 1-year mentorship with him, directly under him. Yeah, and he basically, in the beginning of the year, he basically called me out, and called all of us out who were part of this mentorship program, and said,
and I called him out too.
And saying, listen, you are the business. You're selling yourself. Whatever it is, doesn't matter if it's nails, doesn't matter if it's personal defense, it doesn't matter whatever. People want to do business with you.
They want to get to know you.
And they want to know who it is that they're doing business with. Yeah. So if they don't know who you are, then you're always going to have that ceiling. You're always going to hit that ceiling. Yeah. And so if you don't actually get out there and do some of this stuff, in this case, he wasn't necessarily talking about just making videos or doing that, but just getting out there. And this goes to what Carrie was saying. I'd step out in my business more. And so it was the same thing. And I said, well, yeah, who cares? Well, what was the vision? Or what was the movie that was keeping me in the fear loop? Well, who really needs to see me? Who really cares to hear more about me online? I already know that my existing students and the people that they refer to, they do the work for me, right? But some strange people out there, heck, for all I know, they might actually think I'm stupid. I don't know what I'm talking about, or I might come across as, who knows, right? So that's the negative reel that starts playing in my mind until I had to stop it, right? Plan and act. And said, instead of what we call the threatened or challenged door. That means at some point you have to stop that reel, that movie, and you have to make a decision. Am I going to feel challenged, or am I going to feel threatened? Yep. If I'm going to let myself be threatened, I'm going to stay in the fear loop. If I'm going to take that as a challenge, then now I'm going to put things into action, which means
and
now,
you learned how to do all kinds of stuff with this.
You taught me how to do stuff like editing and all that kind of stuff. And I said, it doesn't matter if literally 2 people ever watch any of this and both of those people put in the comments, you suck, you don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do this. I'm going to challenge myself to break out of the fear loop and just, again, plan and act. Once you plan and act, now I'm in control. Right?
And,
now
and nothing
it's
bad
not
happens.
uncertainty. No, and actually, my class has doubled in size, even though I don't have the reach. I don't have the reach of the Nail Hub, nowhere near it.
Well, when I first started, I think my first class, I had 3 people in my first class ever, and I was stoked.
And so just in that small step of me being called out and essentially being held accountable, by my own mentor and saying, hey, you need to go out and you need to tell your prospective students who you are and what you have to bring, right, in a different way. In this case, I chose to
allow
do
people. The biggest thing is allow people to get to know you. Allow people to see who you are, because it builds that relationship and that trust and that credibility. I think you've learned that through stepping through that door.
So one of the main things that I've been seeing here, trends, and a lot of people mentioning it, that has to do with that is, well, what is going to be the new normal? And is this not going to end? Is this going to go forever? And even if it does, what is the world going to look like on the other side of this? Again, we're going back to uncertainty, right? There is some uncertainty because we don't know exactly how it's going to pan out, but our mindset is that with every change lies opportunity.
Completely.
Right? So I just expressed to you something that was a challenge for me, that was a big change for me, and that is now a big opportunity. So all of these changes, whatever they are, because we don't know what any of them or all of them are going to be yet, there's lies opportunity for you. And like as we were discussing, whether it's something like getting out in front, of the camera more, and or having more of being more active on social media, there's going to be a lot of different ways that you're going to be able to make your business stand out in a way that you didn't before this.
Well, right? or even taking the time, during this, and a lot of you who follow the Nail Hub, right? You're already those kind of people where when you have free time, you go on and you start learning things, just like me. I'm totally like that. In my free time, I'm always online. I'm always like trying to learn things from other people. I'm always trying to take classes. I'm always trying to improve myself. You guys are already doing that, which is very cool. And even if it's something like that, where when your salon is able to reopen or when you're able to go back to work, why not take this time to learn some skills that you can come back to the table and say, hey, we had this downtime, I learned something new, and now I have something additional to offer. So, even for people who ultimately don't, want to ever be involved in social media or be online, because it's not all about online, that is a big part of our world now. But I also know there's a lot of people who they have, like a rural salon, or they're in a smaller town, or they're just like really focused on like a specific thing inside of their business. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn new things, to hone your skills, be practicing at home. If you have something like, let's say you have a design on nails that you've been struggling with, when clients ask you for it, why not take that time to conquer that? And then when you go back, that, hey, next time someone asks me to do French, I've got my French dialed in. It can be something as simple as that.
Or even something more in terms of the actual business itself.
Yeah. Or revamping your menu, or
revamping. Let's say you can position yourself as the most hygienic nail salon, right?
Totally.
And you say, now I'm going to redouble my efforts to make sure that my my techs are safe, that we're following the most stringent hygiene and safety protocols.
Training
blah, blah,
clients about how to arrive to the salon, what they should be doing as their part. So it is going to change a lot of things. This whole pandemic, we don't have the answers to that. We talk about it a lot, which is, again, where does the opportunity lie? And I think Herman and I would both encourage you to, instead of thinking about it as an uncertain thing, like, well, I don't know what the new world is going to look like, so I'm kind of hesitant to do anything because I'm kind of freaked out about it, just start thinking about things that you know you can do as it comes day by day, right? So a few days ago, especially in the United States, we were still, officially on lockdown. Now there's discussions happening about, is this going to get lifted in certain areas? So every day there's more information, and I would suggest that you adapt as you get more information, right? Constantly be revisiting these opportunities, constantly be revisiting your ideas about what you want to do when things get back to whatever the new normal is, and just be flexible and adjust to that as it happens. And the more that you have these conversations with yourself and the more that you really digest this information and really think it through, I think you're going to be that much more able to make those changes and make those determinations for yourself and be confident in making those determinations about, yes, I want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. Yes, I want to do, it just allows you to be a little bit more light on your feet, I think is my whole point.
Yeah. And, right here I have another comment that,
well, and real quick, before we do one of our pre-prepared ones, I wanted to quickly have you touch on something, because some people are bringing up some really cool stuff on our live chat.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at out of the corner of my eye with some stuff. So hi everyone who said hi. We have a few people from Mexico on here.
Cool.
So
bienvenidos, paisanos.
Sí, gracias. And then also one of the questions that stood out to me. So we've got Sue on here. She said, should we not wear our gold or diamond jewelry for fear of being targeted? And I really like this because this goes back to the video that we just did before this.
Yeah,
about
it's more
the
about
threes.
security.
Yeah, this is about security. And I know it might kind of jump
Yeah, we're
in
going to be all over the place, so that's fine.
But we're basically just covering everything that we covered in the last 3 videos, as well as some questions we're getting today, and also some prepared questions that we gleaned from our emails and also our comments on YouTube. But I really like this question because I feel like this is something that we touched on last time, and it is one of those things. So not advertising to bad guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything is about context, obviously.
Yep.
So it depends on where you are, where you're going. I mean, we obviously, I'm originally from Mexico. We travel to Mexico a lot. A lot of the things that we do when we go to Mexico, we have to take a lot of other things in terms of safety into consideration.
Or when we go to visit my brother in New York, or when I go to any major big city, I do adjust what I'm going to wear and what I look like, and all, just because I don't like to call attention to myself when I'm in big places. I like to fly under the radar because it just seems to cause us problems.
What we call it in personal defense is call it be the gray man.
Ooh, be the gray.
Right. So you're going to be right, because there's both ends of the spectrum, right? So you could call attention to yourself because you have unkempt hair and you have all clothing that doesn't match, and you look almost
you can be dripping in diamonds and gold and be super flashy, and everyone's
in either of those scenarios, you're calling attention to yourself, right? So we want to be in the middle where you just kind of under the radar. Nobody, you don't stand out. So, and that's a good rule of thumb. That's what I abide by. I don't wear anything showy or flashy.
Yeah, I don't like to advertise anything to anybody, mainly because we just want to stay private. I mean, it is a security thing, but it's also just a privacy thing too, which is I just don't want to feel like people are gawking at me when I'm out and I'm trying to enjoy myself, or I'm trying to, get somewhere.
But again, it's more dependent on context than anything. So if you are, there are times when we do want to dress up. We do want to go to a fancy place or whatever. And so you just have to weigh the pros and cons. So remember, the other thing that we always say, there are no perfect solutions, only trade-offs.
Only trade-offs,
right? And you have to know what those trade-offs are. Okay, there's no one answer that covers everything, and that's going to be perfect for every solution.
Do you feel like the pandemic specifically, because I have a feeling this is also, powered by the whole pandemic ideas, do you think now that we're in more of a stressed time frame with the pandemic that's going to change the context of whether or not you should advertise to bad guys?
The only thing that I will tell you is that the longer this goes on, the lockdowns and quarantines and all that kind of stuff, this is just experience and history speaking, the more that people are going through this, the more that people are going to start either to panic or to get or to feel like they have to what's the term I'm looking for? They're desperate. Right. Okay? The more that people are going to be desperate. Desperation brings out the worst in people. So absolutely, that's something that's always in the back of my mind when the few times that we do go out, if we're going to go out, get groceries or whatever, or get some supplies. I'm always aware of that at any time, it also depends on where you are. Again, everything is context. There is going to be, the more that this goes on, there's going to be more desperation. So if you want to just not even make it an issue and say, hey, I'm just, again, going to go through life as the gray woman, gray man, take off jewelry, whatever, and just be, sweats and my protective covering, my PPE and all that.
And to be honest, I'm just wearing my wedding band right now. I'm not wearing, my engagement ring or anything like that. I've kind of toned it down a little bit. And when we go out, obviously we have our mask on, so that kind of, gets you into the gray zone with people. But yeah, I don't like to call attention to myself regularly when I'm out in the public. And I also, in my humble opinion, I would say keep it toned down, because you also, even if it's not for a security thing, it is a security thing, because you don't want to be calling attention to yourself and giving people like, oh, she might be a target, or he might be a target, or whatever. But also, I would also approach it maybe from the humility aspect, which is, there's a lot of people that are having a hard time right now financially. And so I also don't want to be one of those people that they glance over it at what I'm wearing or what I look like, and I make them inadvertently feel down about themselves. And that's like a completely different thing than what we're talking about. But I would also add just that element of maybe also just show humility by being in the gray zone, which is the more that you kind of fly under the radar, the less that you're going to also create that type of experience for others as you're out. So that's also something that's just in the back of my mind.
And there, we do have some comments here that are very much in line. There is a theme here from a lot of people. So we have like Lee and Tamara, a lot of these people here. This is just, they responded as a salon, but so a through line in a lot of this, some of you guys are asking about this, is many people are saying, well, I'm not really afraid per se, but I am afraid of what other people might do. That goes to the whole thing, well, what if someone's getting desperate and doing this or that or the other thing. Now, this is very common, and this goes back to what we're talking about. The reason why you feel like that is because you don't have power over what other people do, right? So ultimately, this is what we teach in personal defense, which is you come to terms with the fact that you can't control what other people do. You can only control what you do. That's where your empowerment comes from, okay? So if you see people out there and they're saying, oh, this isn't a big deal, COVID-19 is not a big deal, and you see people out there and they're acting like it's no big deal, or even if they take it seriously, but they're not being safe out there and they're not using mouth coverings, they're going into crowded areas, they're not keeping their distance, all that kind of stuff, you can't control any of that. The only thing that you can control is what you do to handle it, meaning then that means that you have to be the one who's going to be wearing your PPE, that you're going to be limiting the amount of times you go out. If you have the option, you are going to stay in, because those people are going to be out there.
What's PPE?
Our PPE, personal protective equipment.
Okay.
So all this stuff, the masks, the gloves, all that kind of stuff. So you don't have control about any of them. And this is what we teach, right? So when people come to us and they say, well, I want to learn how to be a safer individual, right? We teach them, as opposed to most other schools that will teach you self-defense moves, like how to protect yourself. Like, okay, so how do I get out of the strangle, right? If I'm getting, or a bear hug. If some bear hugs me, what do you do? Okay, we'll do the stomp and the blah, blah, right? Instead of doing all that, which we do some of it, we get to that. But the most important stuff that we do is the fear management, like all that kind of stuff.
Mindset,
but then also teach people how not to fight. That means
avoidance
and de-escalation, right? We call it the 3Ds, which is detect, to avoid. We do de-escalate, and then if none of that works, defend, right? But there's a lot of things that happen before a violent encounter ensues that could have gotten you out of it. Should you have been there in the first place? What can you do? That's why we talk a lot about awareness, both self-awareness and situational awareness.
And you talked a lot about that in our security video, which was the one right before this as well, which we talked about, like, have an exit plan, right? Like, things like that. Don't advertise yourself to the bad guys. Don't be walking around, looking like a freaking target with, maybe it's the jewelry on in the middle of some situation that you really shouldn't have all of that on, or it could be something as simple as, fumbling in your purse, in the middle of a parking, just like those typical examples that we get. But yeah, absolutely. If you haven't watched our security video, it's right before this one. So go back and watch that, because we went through also a lot of those measures, not only the mindset piece in our first video, but the security thing. You also talked about like a lot of prevention measures that people can take to even avoid getting into those scenarios where you've got people trying to steal from you or hurt you or any of that stuff.
Avoidance is the name of the game, because there's the only way that you can be sure that you're not going to end up getting hurt or whatever or worse is to not be in the situation in the first place. So the problem with most mainstream schools of self-defense or personal defense or whatever, and it's something that actually I don't like about my industry, is that a lot of it is actually fear-based, meaning they need to convince you that it's just a matter of time until someone comes and gets you, because it's a it's a dirty evil world out there, and everybody's out to get you, and it's just a matter of time. So come to me, and I'm going to teach you how to kick their butt. Right. So that's a huge aspect, huge part of that industry, which I detest. And the reason why I ended up, becoming an affiliate for Blauer Tactical and all the and a mentorship under Tony Blauer, is because it's exactly the opposite, which is it's about empowering people and saying, hey, recognize, even during pandemic and lockdown and everything that we're going through right now, we're still living in the safest time in human history, especially if you live in the West. And so that's something that we should feel good about. We actually should feel lucky that actually violence isn't a part of our everyday lives. Now, that doesn't mean that we can get complacent, because it can still happen. And if it happens, we just need to be ready. So that's all it is. Just like you said with the approach to your house burning down, right? If you're out and about, you're out running errands, or you're out at work or whatever, no one is sitting there just completely consumed by fear about, oh my God, I bet my house is burning down right now. Right? Why? Because you've already done certain things to either mitigate that factor, and even if it happens, to get come back from it, meaning insurance and all that kind of stuff.
We all do things to prepare. We just don't think about it in that aspect, because again, like what we talked about I think it was in our last video, we're talking about that, like where this, if you really start to think about this and you really start to connect the dots, these types of conversations that we're having really aren't that foreign. It's just because we haven't really thought about it as, actually, you know what, now that I think about it, I do a lot of that stuff normally. Like I have, we talked about, I have smoke detectors, I have a lock on my front door, I have, like, there's a lot of things that we do that we consider very normal as part of being prepared in case of an emergency, or in case of someone trying to enter our home. Some of us have security cameras. So it's funny, because when we talk about our personal safety, or we talk about our personal preparedness, then people go, whoa, that's really foreign to me, I don't understand. But if you think about it just like anything, it actually isn't as foreign as you would expect.
And it's actually more important, because
it's more important because it's you.
Think of how devastating it would be to lose your home, which tends to be people, even if you're a renter, right? Yeah. It tends to be people's largest investment, right? Their biggest asset is their home. But technically,
materials are replaceable. I mean,
and you can still replace all of that. I mean, no one would ever want to be there.
No.
Right? No. Even in the best of cases, it would still be devastating for someone, but you could get through it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if it comes to your personal safety, you literally stand to lose everything, right? And the people that depend on you, right? Whether it's your children,
that love you.
Whether it's the people at work that depend on you. If you're a first responder, there's a lot of people that depend on you, but yet we don't think about that stuff as much, because it actually is, again, fear loop. It is a movie that when we start watching, when we think of even the prospect of something happening to us, it's so uncomfortable that we turn it off, and then we just put the blinders on and say, precisely because we live in relatively safe times, that we say, oh, it's just not going to happen. So I break down people into two camps. The people that don't think about this, or don't take the time to learn about this. I break them down into two camps. One, they're both based out of a naivete. On one end is the people that say, you know what, it's probably not going to happen. If it happens, I'm going to rise to the occasion, right? So I don't even need to take any training or learn anything else. It's just, if it happens, I'll rise to the occasion and I'll get out of it, right? And then there's the other side on the other end, which say, it's just never going to happen to me, period. So I don't want to think about it. And then they just go about their merry life.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday.
Right? So, and what we try to think, or what we try to bring to people is, no, you don't, in order for you to be safe, you don't need to be a martial artist, or or train in combat sports, or you need to be, Rambo, or you need to, none of those things. There's very few and specific things that you need to take into consideration, to practice and to watch out for you to be a safer individual, right? And
those were a lot of those threes that we talked about in our security video right before this.
So yeah, it's not about you going, all right, guys, here, I'm going to sell you a gym membership, so now you better be here and train, self-defense, 5 days a week, right? That's not what, if I just try to make you into an professional MMA fighter for you make you feel like you're
Yeah, it's
safe.
not realistic for a
It's
lot of
unrealistic, right? We have lives to lead. We're talking to people that are, they're homemakers, they're CPAs, they're manicurists, they're whatever. You're not going to do. That's how I started, but I did it for
Fitness.
for fitness and for fun because I hated traditional gyms. So
Yeah.
I did martial arts for 12
But as a good
years.
example, I'm married to a personal preparedness and defense expert, and I still don't feel like it's realistic for me to know all of those things, and I do take ownership over the fact, we talked about this yesterday, just as husband and wife, just even having like a family discussion. And we did talk about that yesterday, and Herman's concern was, he's like, Liz, we're doing these live videos, we're doing all these videos on YouTube. I'm a little concerned it's going to come across that like we're married, you're married to me who is the expert, and you don't know all of the stuff that I'm teaching on these videos, and you're hearing a lot of this stuff for the first time. Like that might look negative to people out there. And I said, yes, absolutely. But also I think it's important for you guys to know that I absolutely take 100% accountability for that, which is I have an expert right here next to me all the time. And I still have to challenge myself to overcome that mental block that I have, which goes, it's never going to happen to me. This isn't realistic for my life, and sometimes I find myself being as shallow as, how do I do this? I might break a nail. I mean, honestly, I get myself in that level of superficiality where Herman's trying to talk to me about something and I'm going, well, I can't do that because I might break one of my nails off, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because you're going, wait, so you value your nails over your personal safety? And I really have to constantly, because I'm not someone who naturally is inclined to think about these things, and I tend to brush things off. And also I'm kind of a goofy person. Like I kind of joke around and go, oh, it's not that serious, ha ha ha, because ultimately it's a very uncomfortable conversation. It's stuff that makes me nervous. It's stuff that makes me anxious. So instead of me taking, the charge and the challenge and going, yes, I'm going to learn everything I want to know about this, I do find myself naturally going, I don't need to know that. I've got him. But he might not be home with me when something happens, or you might not be with me when something happens. And we've had that conversation several times. And just like a lot of you, with this pandemic, it was one of the first times that I really started to wake up and go, wow, I really need to stop taking this for granted. I really need to start. And that was kind of what spurred also us doing these videos, because I looked at myself and said, I'm failing myself. And I wanted to share a lot of this information because I didn't want you guys to fail yourselves either. Okay. So we did even have that conversation. We literally had that conversation yesterday sitting in our house. And I was like, no, this is really important. Even if I look like I'm taking all of this for granted and I'm not being serious and I'm your worst student, which might actually be the case. I think
that just comes with being, a couple,
well,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's an important thing to talk about, which is I'm in the same boat as everyone else, and even Herman, who studies this stuff and works on this all the time, and like you were saying earlier about all your guys that are in the same mentorship and you guys are all work together with each other on this personal defense readiness and all that stuff, you guys also find yourselves in fear loops. So it's not something where you just conquer it and then you never have to talk about this or deal with it ever again. It's going to be something that you really need to work into your daily life and think about it on a regular basis. And the more that you do it, even just after us doing these 4 videos, I feel I don't have so much anxiety talking about it as I did a week ago. So
it's a skill. It's a skill like anything else, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to start learning how to use an e-file, or you're going from acrylic to gels, or all of that stuff, it's all skills.
Yeah, we talked about that example. Like I was telling Herman, I said, one of the biggest examples that I bring as a nail person is I remember the first time I ever started e-filing, and I would literally sweat through my shirt. And I'm not someone who runs hot. I'm usually like not sweaty at all, but I would sweat through my shirt. Like I would have like, all the way down because I was so freaked out by it. It was so foreign to me. I was so worried about hurting someone. I was so worried about hurting myself. And again, something that was like, I never knew, I was not born knowing how to e-file. I'd lived most of my life without e-filing. I learned how to do it. I learned how to do it safely. And now I would consider myself like, an expert at e-filing when it comes to stuff like that. So again, think about it in that perspective. Put it in that picture for yourself, which is, yes, it is personal safety. And yes, it is a little bit freakier because it's much more, personal to us. But it's no different than anything else if you really start to think about it. And the more that you go through this and the more you think through this and the more that you do, work on your mindset, talk about preparedness, talk about security, have these things kind of thought through, dialed in, and the more that you do it regularly as things adjust, like we talked about the uncertainty of what's the new normal after the pandemic, the more that you do this regularly, the more you're going to feel like, hey, I can totally adjust to that. Like, I may not have the answer, but I know, me personally, I can adjust to whatever comes my way. And that's the true thing that we're trying to get across, is that when we talk about preparedness, it's about being able to be ready for pretty much any type of mindset conflict or, preparedness thing or security, and just building that whole confidence factor. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And we have a ton of stuff coming in, so I wanted to quickly go through and just scan the messages before we move on. We've actually got someone from Romania. That's really cool. So thank you again for everyone who's joined us today. I really appreciate you doing this, and I know we had some technical issues in the beginning, so I'm really sorry about that. And actually, at the end of this, we might need to go through Grace's question one more time, because I think I might have accidentally not done it right in the beginning, or we had like some internet issues. But anyway, we're doing our best with our first live, so I really appreciate you being patient. So we've got a couple questions here. So here, so many people don't care about this pandemic thing, and they're not wearing masks and gloves and just get out for nothing. More than half of the people on the streets here are like this.
That's the common thread that I've been seeing here as
like people not taking it seriously.
Yeah, and again, control, right? You can't control. So again, remember the Nixie mindset. Nobody is coming to save you, right? If I assume, which I do, when I go out, I assume that everybody's walking around is infected, and I act accordingly, right? Obviously, they aren't. And a very small minority where we are, very small amount of people in our area. I think there's only been since all of this started, there's only been 13 cases.
We've been very lucky.
And you see basically about 50% of the people you see out there are wearing masks and are wearing any type of whatever. But if you just want to take it upon yourself, one, we limit the amount of times that we go out there unless we absolutely have to. And then two is, again, I just assume that everybody I come across has it right now. Meaning I take it upon myself to be
to act accordingly.
Right, to be as safe as possible. So wearing a mask, not touching, not getting between within 6 feet of them every time we come back. We go through our whole thing with hand sanitizer. We wipe everything down. We clean whatever. Those are the things that we can control, and because we can control them, they're within our purview of what we can do. And so I don't worry about what other people might be doing. I mean, I literally don't spend a second worrying about what other people might be thinking or doing, because I have no control over it, right? I only think about how can I prepare in the event that someone does something that might affect me in some regard.
Right.
That's the extent to which I think about other people, what other people do.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that not everyone is taking this seriously. And again, it's like anything, right? If it hits close to home, it's more likely to make people take this very seriously. If it doesn't hit close to home, then a lot of people just go, it's not that big of a deal. I wouldn't take it personally. I don't think people walk around, thinking that, they're doing this on purpose to purposely infect others. I don't think people actually think about that. I think it's a naivete thing. But like Herman said, you can only control your own actions. So it's unfortunate that other people aren't taking measures to protect their own safety. And that does make me feel bad. But at the same time, you can't control what they do. So just do what's best for you and your family. And, and like I said, even being on this video chat with us today, you're leaps and bounds beyond, what those other people are doing. And it's just, it's one of those things that I love about freedom of choice, is that you can do whatever you want. You can choose to live your life the way that you want to live it. But it's also one of those things that people get irritated when they see it during a time frame like this, that they're like, hey, we should make those other people do it. But at the end of the day,
it comes with responsibility.
Right. But at the end of the day, if the script was flipped, you wouldn't want people forcing you to take your mask off, right? Saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal, take it off. So I like to also respect other people's privacy and freedom and say, look, it's up to them if they want to put themselves at risk. It's up to them if they want to live their lives like that. I'm not going to put my pressure on them to live the way I want to live, because they obviously want to do their own thing, but we also do our part to protect ourselves the way that we want to live our lives. And I kind of like also
control what you can control.
Control what you can control.
That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
So let's start talking about next steps. So obviously our number one thing with all of this, guys, was to have this conversation, have it be an outlet for a lot of people. We've been hearing from a lot of you. I hope that we've helped just at least give you some little bit of help and we're going to give you some resources. So like I mentioned earlier, and it might have been cut off, but now if you want to know more, if you want to get into all of this, and especially I see actually we have I saw some local people and from Arizona, whatever. You were in Arizona. The number one thing I tell you is like, come train with me. Come join me in a class. We go through a lot of this stuff, whatever. And if you just happen to be local, obviously that'd be the best thing. As with most of you, we're locked down. Classes have been canceled. A lot of that. So we're hoping that we're back to normal in May. So we'll see how that goes. But for those of you who want to know more, especially about if like I said, if anything is the best thing, dollar for dollar, pound for pound, whatever, of anything that we teach and that we help, because it cuts across every aspect of your life, is fear and fear management.
Right.
And that the seminar or the concept is called No Fear. Were you too young to see No Fear? Remember the clothing No Fear?
Oh no, yeah, that was.
Yeah, remember that back in the late 80s and 90s. So this is not no fear, because as we talked about, it doesn't exist, right? It's KNOW fear, no fear. If you change your relationship with fear, if you know what it's about, how it works, and how you can control it, then you're going to be that much more empowered to address these type of issues and a lot others. So I actually worked directly with Tony. I told Tony, the creator of that system and what we teach that I'm certified on, as well as the creator of that program, I told him what we were doing. He was really excited that we're bringing this type of stuff to a completely new audience that he probably thought like it could never be done. Yeah. And so he was willing to give me a special discount code for us for the Nail Hub.
Okay.
For anybody that wants to take the online seminar, we're going to include.
We can put it down below the video.
A link in the comments if you want to jump. Like I said, head first into any of this stuff. That's a resource. You can share it with anybody, kids, your spouses, just anybody. Again, this has nothing to do with tactical anything or self-defense. It's
more that psychological aspect.
Mindset. Okay.
Yeah.
And
that's also, wait, real quick before you jump in. So I know some of you who watch our previous videos, some of you haven't. Some of you have seen Herman's hands on my videos. Some of you have never seen Herman before. So I wanted to at least just give a little bit of background on this as well. So Herman and I also had this conversation because when we decided to do these types of videos on the Nail Hub channel, both of us were a little hesitant because we were like, okay, look, the Nail Hub is supposed to be about nails, and that's what our type of content is. And so just so you guys know, yes, I'm going back to nail videos after this. This isn't like, oh, I'm changing everything about the Nail Hub. I just wanted to add this piece, this like 4-video chunk during this time frame because I think it's valuable, and Herman and I are sitting here at home and we wanted to really help you guys during this time frame. So just be aware that yes, the Nail Hub is going back to nail stuff, and actually I have business stuff planned coming up soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that up in a minute.
Yeah, and I won't get into that, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this because Herman and I also had this conversation, and you brought this up when you were talking about stepping through the challenge of you putting yourself out there with your own videos and how that was a challenge. And just like anything, you and I both, we take it very seriously, the credibility that we have built through the Nail Hub. I especially do. I have been in the nail industry for a while now, and everything I've ever done, I've always tried to be professional, consistent, always provide value anytime I put anything out there. I don't like being salesy. I don't like, pushing stuff on people. I like to just teach fundamentals and let people decide what they want to do and how they want to do it, okay? And so when we had this conversation about sharing what Herman does and also your mentor, Tony, we also talked about that you talked about it with Tony, and we said, hey, look, we're going to introduce this to people who have never heard about this before. Some of you have, but most of you have probably never heard of Tony Blauer, and you probably are just meeting Herman and hearing about you talk about this for the first time. And so we also talked about this, and I wanted to say this because I think it's really important, is that we are fully aware that the stuff that we are recommending to you is beyond what you may normally consider as, hey, this is something I'm interested in learning. But I really want to encourage you to take this opportunity to learn some of these things. And yes, Tony is, Herman's going to recommend some of Tony Blauer's stuff to you, and it is going to be a little bit of a stretch because we're asking you to get to know Herman on these videos, not just your nails, but you personally and what you like to, invest your time in. And I hope you guys have seen the value that has come from these conversations. And then what I told Herman is we're going to also introduce you guys to the stuff that Herman really works a lot in, right? Which is the no fear with, you know, the Tony Blauer tactical stuff that he works on and all of that. So like a lot of the videos that you might be recommending, you may not be in. And so I wanted that to be
Right.
clear.
Well, I'm working my way down through all that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. But I just wanted to say that we're fully aware that this is beyond, but I also think it's really important for you guys to realize that if you want to get more information, instead of hearing me, you know, talk about on a nail channel, I really encourage you to go and start following experts like Hermann and everything that he does, because these are very valuable tools that I don't have enough information to share with you myself. And so because this is a shorter series, I wanted them to be very aware that I am completely putting my, you know, stamp of approval on this, because I think it is very valuable, and I wanted to kind of explain that whole transition that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't want you guys to feel like...
Well, it's not really even a transition.
Well,
I mean,
no, I just wanted to, I wanted to explain like why, you know, it's
Yeah.
important for them to take this seriously, and
understand.
kind of what we're trying to achieve here.
So basically what we're trying to do is just give you options. That's
Yep,
all we
absolutely.
do. The way I see my role as a personal, you know, safety, personal defense instructor is as an options facilitator. I want people to have outs, no matter what
Choices.
the situation
Yeah.
is have options. So like I said, if you want to jump headfirst into all of this, the first place to start would be in knowing, you know, no fear, and, you know, jump into that. The next step would be, obviously, if you are anywhere in the area, to train directly with me, and hopefully that, you know, that happens sometime soon.
Yep.
We are actually, just like we talked about pivoting, right? Pivoting your business, everything that's happening. Something that we've done is that we had to do pivot is we're actually doing online live classes via Zoom. We're actually doing these what we call essentials of personal safety
That's very
classes
cool.
that we're also, I'll include a link to them as well. And then, like Liz said, if you just want to kind of keep a toe in the water, keep tabs of some of these topics, and just kind of get these little morsels here and there, follow my channel, follow me on social media. I'm always, the way that I try to do things, there's a lot of really good content out there, a lot of really good creators that talk about this stuff, long form with half an hour long, you know, videos talking about all this stuff. The way
Well,
that
you keep yours to like five
I
minutes.
keep mine to just 5 minutes.
Which is very cool.
I wanted to set myself apart by just saying, hey, I'm just going to bring these topics up and just give you a nice little bite-sized morsel that will add value, that'll teach you something. And if you want to know more, then I'll take you there. But I just want to reach as many people as possible by just those little bites. And people say, okay, I kind of get this. This seems interesting, seems like something important. Let me dig a little deeper
I love
without wasting, you know, taking a lot of your time. It's not a waste, without taking a lot of your time.
Yeah.
And then from there, really what we want to accomplish with all of this, guys, is we want you to come out of this a better person.
Yes.
A better person, a better partner, a better business owner. Out on the
100%.
other side of this lies so much opportunity that you're not even going to know what to do with it. And so if you're prepared, if you have the right mindset and the motivation, I'm convinced that all of us are, I know for a fact, my business, my personal defense business, is going to be better once I open up again.
Yeah.
I know for a fact because I'm making sure of it.
Yep.
We know that the Nail Hub is going to be better on the other side of this thing. And so what are you going to do to make sure that you're better in the other side of this whole experience? There's so much opportunity. There's so much that we can do to add value in a post-COVID-19 world that there's going to be room for everybody. Okay, so I hope that this is what people are taking away from all of this, and that
I think they are, because we've got some people saying thank you so much for actually, you know, making your content pertainable to what's going on. And so I'm really glad to see you guys are actually getting what we're trying to get across, because sometimes that's a little bit hard, you know, but I'm glad we did this more kind of conversational, and you came on with me for 4 videos and did all of this with me, because I really think it helps people get comfortable with,
and I mentioned
with what
before,
you do
there's
and all
something that needs to kind of come back into the Nail Hub that we think is important enough. We'll just include it as part of this playlist.
Oh, for sure.
And we can, you know, revisit
this
some
won't
of
be
this
this
stuff.
won't be the last
So-
time we talk about it, but I do also want you guys to realize that yes, I am staying true to the fact that the Nail Hub is about nails. But I do want to sprinkle in some things that are valuable to you that I think apply to more than just, you know, tactical people or whatever. I really think that this is pertinent to a lot of people out there. And like I was saying before, my going forward that I want to move into, so I've spent over a year doing gel nail fundamentals, like teaching you guys everything about gel nails from start to finish. Then I started doing the all abouts, which I'm going to continue doing all abouts because I think you guys are really liking to learn all the in-depth stuff about each product. That way it's kind of almost like you can get the information you need to make a purchasing decision or to decide whether or not a product is for you or not. So I like a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, we basically, Herman, I don't know if you guys know this, okay, but the Nail Hub actually started as a podcast. Some of you have been following me since I was a salon owner and since I started the podcast. And Herman's actually the one that put a microphone in front of me and said, start recording because I want you to share your experiences. And I have a financial analysis background. And so when I got into the nail industry, I started sharing a lot of my kind of experiences as a salon owner, as a nail technician. And that's kind of how we got all the way to where we are today, right? It's like the whole journey. I've been sharing a lot of information as I go along. And so part of the big part of the podcast was about being a salon owner, right? And sharing the business information that I had, the things that made us successful, all of my thoughts on the way things are done in the nail industry and some ideas on doing things differently. And so that's also going to be that's what I've been working on during this time frame at home, is I've been working on putting together business concepts for videos for our YouTube channel. So I hope that also will help you guys because, as we said, taking advantage of opportunity, taking this time frame to really come out the other side more empowered, more productive. I want to make sure that for those of you that do need to get a business back online, or you do want to adjust to the new normal that we're going to see, I want to make sure that you have also those tools in your arsenal as far as how do you address the business side of things.
And actually, on that topic, before any of this happened, we already had a bunch of business-related content that it was basically in the pipe, ready to go.
Yeah.
When all of this happened, we had to stop it. So if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, subscribe now because we're going to be providing a lot of stuff. So I've created emails on staffing, hiring, interviewing, customer service, mindset when it comes to strictly to your business, training. There's a lot of really good stuff that we basically had to stop doing because everything got locked down, and we thought that it'd actually be better to talk about this kind of stuff right now because of everything that happened. But literally starting the next couple of weeks, we're going to start throwing those emails, that content out there again once everybody starts going to work. And we have really, really good, valuable stuff. Like Liz said, her background is in finance. My background is not just in personal defense and stuff. My background in the corporate world is in management, managing teams, managing projects, customer service, a lot of good stuff that I think a lot of people in the beauty industry should be more aware of.
Totally.
And all of that stuff is going to be right at the perfect time when everybody's going right back to work. So if you haven't, if you're not already signed up to our newsletter, do it now.
And I have the link right below this video. So if you look down in the information section right below the video, I have a link to sign up for our email newsletter. Just click on that, subscribe, and we do not send any junk.
We don't share your information.
We don't share
with anybody.
any information. Literally, all we send out on that email list is the stuff that Herman's talking about, and we have seasonal sales. Other than that, all you're going to get is awesome content, just like we have here on YouTube. And like I said earlier, Herman and I take our credibility very, very seriously, and so that's also why I like to be very choosy about what we talk about and what we do and make sure it provides value. That's probably the number one thing that we live by, is providing value.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll leave you with this, and this is something in my last call with my peers, and one of them, who's one of our leaders, who is a retired police chief in Texas, we call him Chief, and he told us, think about everything prior to this whole lockdown, prior to COVID-19. Think about how many times you said to yourself, I wish I could do X if I only had the time. Okay? You have the time now. What are you going to do with it? Okay? So we'll leave you with that, and hopefully you make the best of it. You make something productive. You make something better of yourself and your business during this whole time. So we wish you, the best of luck. Be strong, be safe, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.